Can you all hear me all right? Awesome. My name's Steve Philpott. I'm a former active duty Marine. I served in North Carolina in Camp Lejeune. I shot artillery a lot, so I've been exposed to a significant amount of explosions just as an occupational hazard. Um, After I left the Marine Corps, I found out my leg was broken, got a lot of opioids, and had some very adverse side effects to those legally prescribed pills, and also had friends that overdosed at the same time from the same pill. So to make an endless story short, I actually spent 10 years after I got out the Marines coaching Division I sports. I coached at a couple different big institutions, and I went from there to becoming a sports scientist because I was interested in the data that we're capturing. Everybody wears Fitbits and different things now. I was kind of interested where that path is going, and at the same time, I knew cannabis was going to be really big. So I was one of the only strength coaches in the NCAA. I was secretly a medical patient because I couldn't talk to my athletes I was coaching about it. But as a medical patient, I was allowed to cultivate plants in my home. And after 4 or 5 years, I took my VA bill, went back to school, and became a cannabis researcher. And now I do a lot of public education, just kind of telling people about those experiences, both veterans and athletes, as some of the highest performers in our society, and how these natural substances can be beneficial. So happy to be here. I'll pass it back.
Oh, thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
Hi. Hey, how you doing? It's great to be here. My name is Mark the Shark Irwin. I am a former bare knuckle boxing world champion. My claim to fame is that I won the world title on 7.5 grams of psilocybin. I fought all my professional fights under the influence of psilocybin. And in addition to using them for performative benefit, I'm currently working with a nonprofit scientific research group called the Athlete's Journey Home, and we are trying to help cure brain damage caused by traumatic brain injuries using psychedelics. We just had our first research study in Portland, Oregon, which is actually headlined by Daniel Carcio at the Experience Onward Center, and myself and a number of other athletes from many different disciplines underwent psilocybin therapy, and we're excited to get the results back on the brain scans and everything else to help definitively prove that these medicines do help cure brain damage and a number of other ailments. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, my name's John Borden. 2.5 years ago, I had an experience with psilocybin that completely flipped my life on its head. Up until that point, I was living for immediate gratification, caught in the bullshit of the rat race and trying to work up the corporate ladder, living for the weekend and only finding pleasure in the immediate things of this world: alcohol, cocaine, whatever. I had an experience with psilocybin mushrooms that completely sucked me out of that and allowed me to find strength within myself, with community, and with the world around me to choose how I wanted to live my life. And I've chosen to live my life in a completely different manner since then. Over the past year and a half, a fire got lit inside me from a physical fitness standpoint. I have turned into a competitive strongman athlete. I've completed ultra marathons and competed at a high level in obstacle course races such as Spartan races. I wrote a book about my experience called Your Mindset is Your Reality, a firsthand account of the positive effects of psilocybin on mental health and addiction, and currently work as an integration coach helping others to cultivate the change that they're looking for in their life. So with my work as an integration coach and a personal trainer, I help people build their highest self mentally, physically, and spiritually. Happy to be a part of this panel. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, my name is Ricky Williams. Was a professional football player, won the Heisman Trophy, was one of the best in the world at what I did. Oh my God. Oh my God. But at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was make a positive difference in the world. And I didn't care how it happened, and somehow it led me to be on this stage right here. And I really love this conversation because it celebrates diversity. I think typically you don't hear professional athletes talking about psychedelics. And I think different circles, but I think a professional athlete, we have a certain kind of mentality. So it's blending that mentality with what the potential for psychedelics are. And I think all the research that's being done to prove the efficacy is wonderful, but as an athlete, proof
efficacy is is your performance. And so for me, always, the proof is in the pudding. And for me, to be successful in life, you have to be making a positive impact on other people. And for me, at the core of this is how can psychedelics help us make a more positive effect on the world?
Thank you. That's beautiful. Like athletes, when I was going to school to get my doctorate, we could not smoke marijuana. And I've been doing it since I was 13. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and not until I did ayahuasca I realized it was more than Crohn's disease, but that's another conversation. I was the first person in my school that failed a drug test, and it was marijuana. So they called me to the office, and I was really proud because I actually had my marijuana card, but it didn't matter because it wasn't federally legal. And before that moment, and why I was one of the first people in Florida getting my marijuana card, is I was hospitalized 9 months and intubated, and I got a colostomy bag, and I was allowed to go back to school on opioids and Ambien and all of these things where I would fear I would not only drop a patient, but my own child. And this stuff was making me sick. And I did plant medicine, and I stopped all of that stuff. I mean, I was on an IV for 9 months in the hospital, dilaudid morphine, and it was weird that that was the way they were pushing me. And even in school, they had an anti-opioid poster on the elevator. And I remember the day they called me to the office to let me know my THC was so high, not only did I need 30 days to cleanse, but maybe 60 days. Like, they're like, how much weed do you smoke? What's going on? And I'm like, I have my card. I was so proud. I thought I was going to pave the way for the doctors of tomorrow to be allowed to take that type of medicine. And then they actually told me if I didn't clear my system within a specific amount of time, I'm out. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter anything I went through. And I ripped down that poster, and it was really upsetting. So I had a lot of people message me about questions to ask you guys, and how inspired they were from your journeys, and that it's like, when did you realize the stigma of, for example, like, I've been doing marijuana since I was 13 years old, and I thought I was doing a drug, and I would hide. And I remember a moment where I stood up from stooping in a corner, even before I had my card, and I said, I'm not going to fucking, excuse my language, hide anymore. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm doing medicine. So what was the turning point for each one of you where you realized, I'm doing something that's healing me and I can heal others with it, and you switched maybe that bias? Because so many people are stuck with that bias, whether it's their family members, no matter what they've been through, to motivate them that it is a plant medicine. And for me, I think it's about making it a ritual, not a habitual. Like, I used to smoke marijuana and check my work and like a cigarette, but I'd rather just shut down and kind of connect. So I just would like to know that for you guys.
Yeah, I try to be a good advocate and proponent for plant medicine. So I've always been very outspoken about my use of it. Like I said, I fought all of my professional fights under the influence of psilocybin, including some very large doses. I had the Knockout of the Year award in 2022. I took 5 grams that day. I won the world title on 7.5 grams. I was in the Fight of the Year award winner in 2023. I took 7 grams that day. Yeah, I was really trying to push the boundaries and find what is the optimal performative dose. 7's probably too much, if I'm being honest. I would say it's probably a bit too far, but the only way to know is to do it, right? So I'm a huge proponent of plant medicine, and now as my professional prize fighting career is coming to an end, I'm very concerned with the effects of traumatic brain injuries, right? So again, working with a nonprofit that's trying to help find alternative treatment methods, and being outspoken about it, because again, there is a stigma, right? And there is a lot of preconceived biases and things like that. And so I really try to, like I said, be outspoken and be a good proponent for the medicine and show that, there is benefit for it, and I'm really excited for the research to come out from the nonprofit to help further those claims.
Yeah, I think for me, as a Marine, you know, people hear the statistics all the time about mental health, PTSD, TBIs, and suicidal ideation. So I was a big proponent for me once I was put on opioids. You know, the opioids were told to me that they were legal pills. They were prescribed by my doctor, but I saw somebody in my unit overdose from the exact same legal pills. So to me, I had to realize legal didn't mean safe. Legal didn't mean 100% you can take this without any worries or side effects. At that point, I had to then take control of myself and go, am I going to educate myself? I had a buddy that had cancer when he was younger. And he was kind of like, again, based on a medical condition, this was something that he had consumed at an age that we would say, you know, isn't appropriate. However, if you have a certain medical condition, then we say it's appropriate. And after he kind of, you know, gave me like a 6-foot bong, a gas mask, a bunch of joints. I didn't take my Percocet, my hydrocodone that I was prescribed for a week. And my only question was, how can you replace this synthetic medicine with this plant? It must be significantly more powerful than what we think. And to me, you know, being a strength conditioning coach, I thought it was interesting that even when I left the Marines, the #2 cause of death in the NCAA and college athletes is suicide. So that showed that it wasn't just me as a veteran. There were other high-performance populations like all of us have experienced on this stage, and we've been exposed to similar conditions and stress. And I think now that type of advocacy for your brothers that you've, you know, literally gone to war with, I think it's easy to kind of like blow past that stigma. You know, you don't want to obviously put yourself in any positions, but it's time to like speak up based on these different careers that we have and head injuries. So that's kind of how I got to this point.
Thanks. I have a very similar bracelet to you. My mom gave it to me not too long ago. Yeah, so for me, really the key turning point mentally, you know, it wasn't giving up coke, which I did basically on the spot after finding psilocybin. It wasn't stopping getting drunk, which was a conscious choice that I had after a couple different experiences with it. It was when I realized that I didn't, two things. One, I defeated a food eating disorder that I had my whole life. I did not eat vegetables my whole life. My mom gave me a phobia when I was 5 years old, and that stuck with me until I was 29. Yeah. And I'm under the influence of psilocybin and saying, you know what, fuck it. I just ate mushrooms. Why wouldn't I eat the vegetables in this poke bowl? So I pushed them together, I ate it, and it was fucking delicious. The next morning, I call my mom, and I'm like, Mom, you'll never guess what the fuck happened. So I had to explain it to her, and I had to say, you know what, this is my experience, and no matter what her opinion is of my experience, she was very anti-drug. My brother almost died from, you know, a horrific incident involving drugs and the whole, you know, cartel industry and everything like that. So my mother had a very poor image of drugs. So me explaining this to her was a very cathartic moment where I needed to open up to her, and I needed to say, hey, look, this is so much better than anything that you could possibly think it is. This isn't drugs, this is the anti-drug, and let me explain to you all the positives that have happened to me in my life since finding this a month ago. And so it was really that big turning point where I could be honest with myself and honest with the people whose opinions mattered to me the most in the world, and say, you know what, fuck it. If I don't care about their opinions as much as I care about my own and about the truth that I'm living, and bringing that to the world for the people who really need to hear it.
Yeah, so the question was about the moment that we decided to like, get over the stigma.
It's like when you, like, if there was a moment where you felt like you were doing drugs, and then there was a moment you feel like you were doing medicine. Like for me, there was a moment where I'm like, my mom's giving me marijuana. I can't tell anybody in middle school, you know, she wanted me to eat, digest, but I thought it was bad. I'd be taken from my home, and you know, like there was a lot of fear around that, and then at one point I realized this is healing me, and I'm not going to hide anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that's happening more and more like, on a daily basis. You know, I think it's the evolution of a relationship, and most of us, depending on when we grew up, that relationship was a negative relationship. And so for me, it's been moments like every moment after moment after moment after moment. But I think when I really got on the path is when I started to meditate, you know, and I remember meditating, and after meditation, I recognized this is very similar to the experience I had when I was smoking, and it was like this weird moment. And I remember I was in Jamaica at where Bob Marley was raised in 9 Mile, and I was talking to his mom, and his mom said that there's this rock up there, and Bob would go up there and he would smoke and read the Bible. And I was like, you can smoke and read the Bible? And in my research, I went back to the origin, at least as far as we can recall, of cannabis, and I came across this term sacrament, you know? And so I started to weave everything I was learning about plant medicine to everything I had learned studying religion, and I just kept seeing so many parallels. And just had this moment where I realized, okay, this is what's going on. And I think plant medicine is a tool, but what it's affecting is consciousness. That's why we're studying the brainwaves. And I think there's multiple ways to affect consciousness. And I think for me, the biggest taboo that I've realized is not a taboo against the plants, it's a taboo against altered states of consciousness. And I think that's what we're all in relationship with. And I think, to me, that's the biggest taboo. And even when you have to make the distinction between medicine and drugs, right? I'm going to use this word, and it's purposely meant to trigger stuff, you know? Right, if you hear people speaking at these conferences, right, and again, I'm using this on purpose, okay, is we're all addicts, right? And I don't mean that as a negative thing, right? Because if we talk about medicine, there's some kind of medicine that an altered state of consciousness gives us access to. And if we're in here, it's because we thrive in that state. And other people's definition, because they don't understand it or they rail against it, it doesn't make it true or it doesn't make it real. And for me, the decision I made is people are going to judge my decisions based on how I act, right? How the effect that I have on them. So I'm doing my best just by being myself and expressing the insights and the compassion and the intuition and the things that I get from plant medicine. And I think that's the ultimate measure. And I think when I realized that, I didn't give a fuck anymore. You know?
So I love all this feedback, and the data is very important. At my booth I have here, we have a measurement. It's called a neural check. So it scans your brain and it'll show what wavelength you're in, and like the comparison of all of them, delta, gamma, alpha, beta, and you can also do a brain tap and shift your brain waves. And I always say, like, you want to achieve the skill from the pill. Because when I started studying ayahuasca and ketamine and MDMA and doing these scans before and after to get the data for people like you and us, all of us, it's for all of us, the data doesn't lie, and it's amazing, the data. So I think that's awesome that you're integrating that. And then with brain injury, if you saw my nickname is Queen of Biohacking, my next question is, just like meditation, a biohack for me is the brain tap. So you guys are all welcome to the table to try that. Tom Brady recently partnered with them because of that neuro-linguistic programming. And I got it after my mom, she unfortunately passed. The hospital killed her in 2019, and my mental health went really low. She was my best friend. And this device really helped me because I didn't have the energy and the frequency to meditate. So people could judge all day, but I wanted assistance to help me. And now I can do this all alone. And I did ayahuasca maybe like 3 times. And some people are like, I've done it 79 times or 102, and to each their own. But, I feel that I achieved the skill, right, from the pill or the drink in that matter, to kind of tap into that space through meditation, through dance, and other things. So my question is, like, with brain injury and with your clients and with your practices, maybe do you incorporate hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or what are some key things you do when you are doing plant medicine, or even just to recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm a huge huge fan of hyperbaric. It's something that I use a lot as a combat sports athlete and somebody who's had a number of traumatic brain injuries, right? Obviously, I'm very concerned with the long-term effects of that. You know, I love sports. I love combat sports especially for everything that it's given me, you know, but the other side of that coin is that, you know, we love watching fights. We love watching the NFL, seeing guys make big hits and do incredible feats, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, when their career has come to an end, you know, the effects of all those injuries, you know, it's really heartbreaking. And so trying to find, you know, alternative means by which to help heal people, whether it be plant medicine, hyperbaric, red light therapy, and all kinds of other natural remedies, you know, in order.
Let's say you could pick 3 to go with plant medicine. Let's make it.
Hyperbaric, red light, and cryotherapy. That's my regular, that's my trio. I try to do it at least 2 or 3 times a week as part of my brain health, you know, and helping to rehabilitate from traumatic brain injuries. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
What was your original question?
So my original question is, what biohack or other tool or modality like red light therapy, cold plunge, hyperbaric, vibration, electrical stimulation, is there anything, even dry needling, body work, anything that you do to help integrate your plant medicine, prolong it, or use it like you found yourself using it even possibly instead of that?
Yeah, I was just telling somebody earlier, I've tried a variety of different psychedelics, and the most profound altered states of consciousness I've had have actually been sober through intentional practices. I do sensory deprivation pretty regularly. The Marines taught me how intense I could perform, like what type of intensity, what type of stress I could perform under. And the issue didn't become being able to perform under stress, it came trying to relax when there's no stimulus. And most of us are overstimulated on a regular basis, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. Sensory deprivation gave me an environment that, you know, they kind of say is similar to before you're born. So you're weightless in a pool. The pool is the same temperature as your skin, 6 inches of water, 1,000 pounds of salt, so you float. There's no light. I usually use earplugs, and I go full darkness. But sitting in there with my eyes open, my brain starts looking for stuff first. Then it starts trying to figure out where the sound is. And eventually, when all your senses drop out, there's just you. And I've had the most intense experiences sitting in there watching the last photons bounce across my eyeballs and then hearing my heartbeat sound like a drum that somebody was beating, but there was no other stimulus. My heart was the only thing that I really had. So through these profound experiences, I'm like, once I finally did psychedelics made sense because I actually floated before I did psychedelics. So when I did psychedelics, I was like, this is a state that I achieved just through floating in a tank. But this is also something that this plant medicine is kind of like, if that's, getting in that tank is intense. It's not for everybody. But that plant medicine also, it just showed me that there's different paths to achieve the same goal. So I would say sensory deprivation, like, I recommend it. And it is one of those ways to experience altered states of consciousness, even without an external supplement or substance.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I really like breathing. I do it every day. Seriously, getting in touch with your breath, the cadences, everything like that is just so major for understanding the way that your central nervous system reacts. One of my friends was having a little bit of a stressful moment earlier today, and we did a couple rounds of breathing with him, which my favorite to help calm me down is a 4-second inhale, a 7-second hold, and an 8-second exhale. So I'm just going to ask everyone to do that with me. Inhale, 4. Hold. Exhale. Thank you.
Feel so relaxed now. Yeah, so part of my path has been studied alternative medicine, studied yoga, studied meditation, studied many different body work modalities. And what I found is something called craniosacral therapy. Oh man, it's psychedelic in and of itself. You know, we're over 75% water, and craniosacral can really tune you into the fluid systems in your body, and also to the fascial systems in your body. And I noticed, for me, being a professional football player and doing a whole lot of damage to my body, is that when I'm sober, I don't really notice, you know? But every time I consume, I feel all the hits, right? All of it, right? Oh, I remember this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And some people say I'd rather forget, and I think that's what opioids can help us do. I'd rather forget. But for me, I'd rather remember, because I have trained myself in what to do with it, what to do about it. And so I think craniosacral therapy is one. Two is body work, you know, in general. And part of that is some movement practices, yoga, Pilates, you know, really allowing our consciousness to stay integrated into the body. I say the body keeps score. This body-mind connection. And the third one is astrology. To me, astrology helps us tune into why, right? It's meaning. Because I think anything, humanity can withstand anything if we have a connection to purpose and why this thing is happening. It taps us into a deeper resource that helps us connect to the intuition, the insight, or whatever we need to be able to overcome it. And I think the biggest disease, and as I studied alternative medicine, all of the ancient medicine said the root of all disease is not knowing our true nature, right? And so as a football player, as a warrior, is we expect the trauma, you know, and to a certain extent we say bring it on, because we recognize that we grow and we become better through being able to overcome. And one of the things that people don't talk about enough with sports is, on a football team, for example, in order to get through a whole football season, you have to be able to heal, right? We call it recovery, but that's a big part of the process. If you only know how to beat yourself up and you don't know how to recover, you're not gonna make it. So in essence, all great warriors have a tremendous healing capacity. And I think these kind of mindfulness practices help us tune into that and activate, because at the root, right, the body has the potential to heal almost anything, right? But we have to have the right ingredients. We have to be living a life that is more soul aligned to tap into that frequency. And plant medicine can help us do that if we have the right mindset.
That's very important. Like a lot of my patients at my clinic, some of them don't want to do specific tests, whether it's blood tests, or there's so many cool technology out there, frequency scanners that can even detect frequencies of cancer, or even take your blood results just through, you know, different pulses going through your body. So because of them not being FDA approved, I can't say, oh, this can diagnose or heal, but there's words around it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of cool technology out there, but even though it's out there, a lot of people don't want to use it because they don't want to know. And I think knowledge is power, but really if you're doing something with that knowledge, not just knowing, because even going to conferences and learning all of this stuff, if you don't apply it, it's really just sitting there. So I think it's beautiful that each one of you have a business integrated with healing and, you know, bringing up astrology. I looked you up, and you have an astrology company that you founded, which is beautiful. My clinic's in Tampa, Florida. If you guys ever come out there, we have red light, hyperbaric, cold plunge. I'm a master body worker. I do dry needling, cupping, manipulation, all of that. So it's really a passion of mine. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, so I work with a lot of veterans and athletes. And but I wanted to kind of bring it to your guys' businesses. And we know you work with a charity, and some of you guys didn't really talk about your businesses or how people could find you, or, you know, how you love astrology and the company. It's Leela. Yeah, Leela. And so I love astrology, and that really, I was like, oh my God, you know, like, who doesn't love astrology? Who's not spiritual, motherfuckers? Like, they shouldn't be here, right? I mean, all of us here are aligned, which is pretty awesome. So I just wanted to bring it to your businesses and how it's spreading in the world, because I love the work that I do every day. Sometimes I stay late. If my patients, God forbid, cancel, one, they're on a membership, so I still get paid. Two, I just jump in the sauna and the ice bath and the cold plunge, and I start healing myself. And I'm like, this is the best fucking job ever, right? So, and then I get the data behind it, which is beautiful to advocate. And we got an advocator in the room, which I'm so proud of you. So you guys are advocating on so many levels, even just by opening these businesses. So share again about your business. I would like to hear about each one and how people could maybe contact you or be involved.
Yeah, so in addition to using psychedelics for performative benefits as an athlete, again, having incurred a lot of traumatic brain injuries, it has its toll on you. And I'm currently working with the nonprofit scientific research group. It's called the Athlete's Journey Home. It was founded by my coach, mentor, and dear friend Ian McCall. He was an MMA world champion and a UFC star. And like many combat sports athletes, at the end of his career, his body was broken. He didn't have any money. He had no employment history or, employable skills of any kind because he had devoted his life to being a professional athlete. He was addicted to opioids. He was suicidal, depressed, and through psychedelics, he was able to cure his mind and his body and find another, alternative. And so he founded the Athlete's Journey Home, trying to help advance the research and provide alternative therapies to people like himself who have suffered traumatic brain injuries. And we all are a part of the human experience, right? Traumatic brain injuries aren't just for athletes like football players or professional fighters like myself. We all have traumatic brain injuries. Whether you get in a car accident, you slip and fall and hit your head, get a concussion, right? And so for me, helping to find a way to help people who are looking for answers is of tremendous importance to me because, so many athletes, like my coach, find themselves at a place where, they don't know what to do. They're looking for answers. They're addicted to opioids, and there is another path and there are alternative solutions. So I'm really excited to be a part of this foundation and to help pave the way for scientific research into traumatic brain injuries and psychedelics.
That's awesome.
So I guess to give a little caveat, in my daytime job, I am a researcher at a university. So I actually study active duty military, actually on the base that I served at. So we do a lot of brainwave data, a lot of performance data, actually looking at how the occupations affect their health long term. So this is something that I do on my daytime job. In my personal life, I have a company called Anzisha Consulting. Anzisha is Swahili for the word startup. Entrepreneur, there's no word for that. So we use startup. But one of the big things we wanted to do is a lot of the science is becoming mainstream, but people are being bombarded with too much science. And I say that not lightly because I'm a researcher. Too much science can also confuse people when the information is not from a credible source or people are making claims that maybe sound too good to be true. When you're actually doing these studies and you have these spaces where people are collecting data, I think it's important. So part of my consulting company is helping people kind of siphon through some of these. You hear a lot of people overpromise in this industry, but when you go through a lot of the research and the data, you can find kind of an objective middle ground. So one of the projects that my company is working on is called ACEs. It's a course. It's called Athletes, Cannabinoids, and the Endocannabinoid System. And we've actually done this in response to the NCAA removing cannabinoids from their banned substance list last June. Yeah. Which is pretty massive if you consider that the NFL spent $1 million to fund the cannabinoid study. The NBA, UFC, NHL have all removed drug testing, and now the NCAA has removed cannabinoids from the banned substance list. So yes, I'm a veteran, but I'm also a researcher and an advocate to make sure that together, I think veterans and athletes have one of the most substantial voices and responsibilities in this industry.
So I figured I'd just get up and show off my tattoo. This is the logo for my company, Get Psyched Fitness. The aim is to blend the physical and the mental and the spiritual. Once it becomes something that I can actually do, we're going to be blending psychedelics and athletics. As of right now, it's personal training, online coaching, and integration coaching separate from that I do. But I want to continue to work for myself to do things that blow my own mind. I started getting into the world of competitive fitness about 1.5 years ago. I hadn't run in over 10 years through the beginning of college, all of the years that I was just kind of wasting my time, and started to get back into it 16 months ago. 8 months after that, I completed a 46-mile ultra marathon. Over the last 3 months, I have competed in 2 strongman competitions and finished 47 seconds off the podium in a Spartan race 2 weeks ago. And so I'm consistently just trying to find ways to push myself forward, drive the message that we all have an inner strength within us that is waiting to be unlocked. And I'm just grateful that I was able to find that for myself, and I want to show other people that there is that strength that you've been pushing away, you've been telling yourself that you can't have for whatever reason, because there's always somebody better than you, because life circumstances have kicked you down, because you don't have the right genetics, whatever the fuck it is. It's all bullshit. And if you can get yourself out of your head and say, this is what I want to do with my life, and go towards that, you're going to have incredible success. So get psyched fitness. Let's make it a movement.
Well, this is kind of what I was talking about, where you get the athletes up here and you get pep talks, right? Which, as a football player, I mean, that was an everyday occurrence. Coach's job was to motivate us and get us all on the same page to do something that's really, really difficult, And I think the ideal as an athlete is to be heroic, and that's my path. And so the businesses that I have, it's really trying to encourage people to live heroic lives. My reality is most of the time, right, I walk around and people are patting me on the back telling me how great I was. And the result of that is because all the obstacles I had to overcome, right? 1, on the football field, but 2, the stigma, all that stuff, to be able to go my own path. And especially coming to cannabis events, people are like, wow, you're so brave, you're so courageous to give up everything for what you truly believed. And to me, that feels heroic, because I can tell that it's inspiring people to do the same. And so one of my companies is Heisman, HIGHSMAN, and our tagline is Spark Greatness. And for me, I feel like the biggest contribution there is about storytelling. And I think one of the most healing things that can occur is for us to have an empowering or an inspiring narrative. It's like if you hear people tell their story, sometimes they tell their story and you just feel like, man, that's heavy. And other times people tell their story, similar story, but the way they approached it is different, and you feel inspired and uplifted. So a lot of the work I do with Leela and my astrology consulting is looking at someone's chart and helping them reframe their narrative. Because I think no football coach, no high-level athlete would ever think about going into a competition without having a scouting report and a game plan. All right, what are our tools? What are we facing? And what's the plan for how we're going to overcome these obstacles? And again, that's just my mindset, because all the years of being a professional athlete, but when you put it on top of all the spiritual practice and all the studying and traveling I've done, I just merged them together and trying to put that out into the world more. So also Lila, Lila, it's an app on Android and on the Apple Store. And if you download it and use a code Lila30, you all get a month for free. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's beautiful. A lot of beautiful businesses, and especially around the exhibit hall. Another question that I have for you guys is, along the way, maybe, did you lose any teammates or people around you in your corner because of your practices that maybe have came back around now and have said, maybe I was wrong, or can you show me the way? Because I know, like in school, when I was graduating, when I failed that drug test, I was like oil, water, and everybody was oil. I'm not going to be oil. right? So, but I felt that disconnection. And after now that I'm queen of biohacking and I reversed a colostomy bag and, I'm going around talking, a lot of people have came back and not only have apologized, but asked for advice. And has that, have you guys experienced similar things? And even maybe if you have children, their friends' parents, I have kids. So like, there's still stigma in schools, but even just creating that openness, non-judgment, those people coming back around now seeking your advice. So keeping it inspiring and positive.
Yeah, like I mentioned, we just had our first research study in Portland, Oregon, with a number of high-profile athletes, and we were featured on Fox News multiple times. And as a result, I've had a number of people reaching out to me and asking me, for advice or opinions and direction and things like that, because a lot of people want to share their traumatic brain injuries with me and kind of unburden themselves, and they're looking for answers too. I don't know that if I've ever lost any personal relationships as a result of my, lifestyle. I think you kind of find your tribe, right? And I attract like-minded people. But again, really just trying to be an outspoken advocate for it. A lot of us use plant medicine in our personal lives or our, professional lives or otherwise. I think a lot of athletes are afraid to be candid and open about their use with plant medicine because they're afraid of the backlash, because of the stigma, potentially losing sponsorship opportunities and things like that, right? So again, I think it's really important that we use our platform to advocate for the causes that are important to us. So I've always tried to be outspoken about my use of cannabis, psychedelics, and plant medicine, and I try to be a good candidate, and proponent of it. And I think that I've done that, and I'm really excited to be at the forefront of using plant medicine as an alternative healing method. And yeah.
Awesome.
I think over the years, I've actually had a lot of veterans reach out. Every state kind of has their own narrative going on, but one narrative that you'll hear in all 50 states is that there's a lot of veterans have PTSD, and obviously this is something that's helping. I think something that's interesting is when I was managing a dispensary for PharmaCann, the largest privately owned cannabis company in the U.S., I learned that there were veterans that were coming in to get something that would help with their PTSD, but there was no science that we could give them objectively to say this will or won't trigger an episode of PTSD. Because there's cannabis that can obviously stimulate anxiety and there's cannabis that can relieve anxiety. So that was one of those situations where I realized I had to do more education myself and then obviously explain that to the community in public education forums such as this. And I think now there's a lot of veterans that are obviously saying, hey, whatever those pills are that I've been on, I'm not interested because I see the numbers of how this goes long term. And I think being a voice to a group of individuals, everybody's affected some way, shape, or form by veterans, either in your family directly, you served, or your community. So I think being able to be a voice to that community and they feel justified, because we're told as veterans, you technically always want to be sober. That's the most optimal, in control mindset that you'll have, and you realize when that gets out, when you get out, it doesn't always serve you. So that's just kind of why I feel like I never really had that negative experience, but there's definitely a lot of veterans that are obviously concerned about the viewpoint with the VA and different things like that. So it's definitely a slippery slope, but I think that a lot of veterans are coming around just because policy. If you hear Texas 2 days ago, they just spent $50 million on a psychedelic study. Texas for veterans, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so when I went through my transformation, there's the big part of addiction is that there's an identity that you've created that you feel forced to live up to for the people around you. And when you realize that that's not the person you want to be anymore, it takes a lot of personal strength to step away from that and to decide how you want to live your life. The people in your life are going to have to accept that, and they can either choose to follow you with the new path or they can let you go. And once you make that decision for yourself of who you want to be, the people that aren't going to fit into that life aren't going to be there. So for me, there was about a year of intense struggle internally, wondering if I was doing the right thing because I had lost so much of my support group. I had a great group of friends who go out, drinking all the time, and old school buddies, dudes being dudes. But then when you realize that you don't want that, you tear away and you lose that, and you lose that community, you lose that support, and you recognize how much you have to lean on yourself and lean on God, really. And it took until I had an absolute breakdown moment and found God that my life started to turn. And I started to listen to the intuition that I was given. And it led me down right path after right path after right path. One of them, meeting Pete, no matter wherever he is, at an entrepreneurial club in St. Pete about a year and a half ago. And, a number of other really beautiful encounters, like the one that brought me to my lovely partner who's sitting there, right there recording. I haven't quite gotten those moments where people have come to me and said, you know what, you're fucking right. There is magic to this stuff, but I can see how I affect the people in my day-to-day and the type of people that I have around me right now in comparison to the ones that aren't there. And I think it's just a matter of times before the ones who aren't there anymore start to recognize that there's a lot of growth that they have for themselves, and we'll come back to that.
So I think, this question depends on how old you are. For a couple, for a couple of reasons. For a couple of reasons, because we're all in the process of growing up, and growing up takes time. And it's not until we've matured, right? It's like fruit or growing cannabis, right? You don't know what's really there until it's reached maturity. And I think as we go through our changes, you don't start to see the fruits of the labor until we've reached a certain age. And also, if we go back in time, right, I got in trouble for cannabis back in 2004, and attitudes have changed so much. So back then, there were more people that were anti. And I think if you're younger, it's less people are anti, and it's going to continue to be the case. So for me, yeah, I get that all the time. People saying you're onto something, you were right. And part of it is because enough time has gone by that things have changed, but also they can see, right? I'm still alive and kicking, and I haven't gone crazy. I haven't. Right, all the things people were afraid of was going to happen to me, right? It didn't happen, and I think if you keep at it long enough. Right, all of us, that's why it doesn't matter. If you keep at it long enough, eventually you figure it out. Right? And I think if we have that kind of compassion for ourselves, it's all good.
I know we probably have to close soon, but I wanted to ask, what is exciting you for the future of plant medicine, psychedelics, and how that integrates with you? So what are you excited about, or what are your hopes?
I think I've said it multiple times, but just to touch on it again, I'm really excited about the healing potential of these medicines. I think that a lot of the stigma and the concerns associated with plant medicine, quite frankly, is just a byproduct of big pharma, trying to scare away, right, people from their competitors. So just continuing to advance the research and to show people with empirical data that this does help reverse traumatic brain injuries. It's good for addiction, alcoholism, and all kinds of other mental health maladies, whether it's depression, suicidal thoughts, and things of that nature. So I'm really excited to be at the forefront of this research, and I'm excited to see what's next for plant medicine and its healing potential.
I think I'm excited to continue to move the conversation forward, obviously, that I've already said about how athletes are experiencing many of these benefits. I serve on a group called Veterans Action Council. We actually have one of our members is the wife of the first patient ever prescribed cannabis through the DEA. So we still have living legends that are alive, and a lot of them are getting to that age where we have to continue those stories. Because as the industry is becoming an industry, there was no word for it before. It was just a thing that existed. So we have to make sure that those pioneers, veterans, pun intended, obviously get that shine going forward. As far as psychedelics go, I'm a member of the North Carolina Psychedelic Policy Coalition, And we are actually one of the largest states with a veteran body because of the bases that are there. And we now see veterans coming out of everywhere, all walks of life, saying, I want access to these treatments. And I think it's important, all of those that are anti-legislation, we don't see change until we go out there and actually talk to people to get stuff like this done. And if I wasn't a part of this coalition with these other members, I couldn't have seen that change. So I'm excited to actually see policy changes going on in states like North Carolina and Texas that I really wouldn't have expected to see change in this fast. So that's what I'm excited for.
So most people here are probably familiar with Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. He wrote another book, though, that I found incredible, and it's called This Is Your Mind on Plants. And in This Is Your Mind on Plants, he takes you through 3 different substances, mescaline, opium, and caffeine, and gives the backstory, the history, how it's cultivated, everything like that. And his section about caffeine really lit my eyes up when I read it. Because he talks about caffeine and the effect that it had on bringing us out of the dark ages in the 14 and 1500s, and what it did to take society from a place where, people, the only clean drinking water was alcohol, and now you could boil tea, you could brew coffee, and now you had clean drinking water. And rather than it being a depressant like alcohol, it was enhancing people's minds. It was helping fund creativity and energy levels and everything like that. And so society started to advance big time once caffeine in the form of tea and coffee were introduced to the West. And I think psilocybin primarily is going to have a similar type impact on the world. It's something that a lot of people don't really understand right now. The people in this room do, but it does so much to enhance the way that you see the world, the way that you interact with the world, the way that you find strength in community and strength within yourself. And so I believe over the next, decade, 2 decades, that it's really going to be a renaissance for psychedelics and to enhance the culture. And we're going to see the waves of it make its way through society on a major basis over the next few years.
I think everything happens in phases. And I think right now, in the phase of psychedelics, we're kind of in the zealotry phase, but that's necessary, right? We need the advocates to push it. And I think the next major stage is normalization, right? And I think part of all of this is the research, because as Steve talked about, and as I've talked about, right, that the plants and the medicine are tools that are giving us potential to study what's going on with consciousness. And I think as more people are willing to use these tools to expand their consciousness, we'll be able to study how consciousness works, and we're going to learn a whole lot. There's been so much wonderful research done on drugs and how they interact with the brain, because they do create some kind of shift in consciousness. And so as research advances, as legalization and regulation changes, and we can do more research, I can't wait to find out what we can do with that research to learn about what it means to be human.
Well, if any of you want to research your brain and you guys want to stop by my booth, it's the Exercise Center in the exhibit hall. I have a neural check, so I'm scanning brain waves, and it tells you a lot about your brain, your meridian pathways, the energy going through your spine. So I'd love to invite each one of you, if you want to check where you guys are at, see the technology, try a brainwave entrainment session. 20 minutes is equivalent. They say 15 minutes is like 2 hours of deep sleep. 30 minutes is like 4 hours of deep sleep. So I'd love for you guys to try that. I know they're transforming this room now. So if you guys have any closing words for everybody, I know that I appreciate everybody here. I think that we had amazing content coming out, beautiful smiles from my direction. I see the reception from here. So it's been a great panel from my point of view. Share any closing words or anything you want to leave people with.
Yeah, it's been an honor to be here at this conference and to get to speak in front of everybody and talk about the benefits of plant medicine. The one thing that I think I would want to leave people with is just to remember that, we're all here because our lives have been positively benefited as a result of cannabis and psychedelics, right? And so we're here to help advocate for that cause. And I think it's important that we all remember that we are the spokespeople for this cause. And so keeping that at the forefront of our minds and being conscious to be good advocates and spokespeople for it so that this movement is taken more seriously, right? That we're not marginalized and criticized as being, hippies or drug addicts, to show that there's efficacy to using the plant and that it can benefit people and that we are, normal, responsible, citizens of the community.
Thank you. Like the moms in my son's classroom. No, bitches. No, I'm kidding. Just joking.
If I could leave everybody with one thing, is that I honestly think, as much as we've just sat here and talked about veterans and athletes, something that I've noticed is we're essentially a proxy for a larger group of the general population. What I mean by that is I study what we call high performance populations. So people who are active duty, people who are combat sports, these are people that perform at their highest all the time. They typically don't have the best diet. They typically don't have the best rest. They are pushing the agenda of what it means to perform. We are a proxy of what everybody is attempting to do in society. So when you hear athletes and veterans saying how much this benefits us, I believe the high performance populations are actually gonna widen. Instead of us just saying certain groups should have access to these things, I think we'll be more inclusive and realize that we're all kind of representing humanity as a whole. So that's it.
Yeah, I didn't come with any final thoughts prepared or anything like that. I just want to say, that I'm really grateful for this opportunity to have a feeling like I'm making some sort of impact in this space. When I had my experience 2.5 years ago, I came to Cannadelic shortly after that, really looking to find my way into this community. And I left that weekend really, feeling empty, not feeling like I was able to make a mark, feel like I was able to make a connection, really take myself to that next stage where I became part of this society that's here. And so for, that whole year after where I said I was struggling, I had, disconnection from friends. I would go back to the medicine and I would ask, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And the answer that I kept getting was just keep writing. Just keep writing. But that sounds so anticlimactic. Like, what? I want to go. I want to go. I'm ready for this next stage of my life. Just keep writing. And I'm fucking so glad that I did, because you have an experience like this where, I feel a little bit like a fish out of water sitting next to a Heisman Award winner and a champion boxer, and Steve and Lauren, and you guys are all so fucking incredible. So, just with that, choose who you want to be. Make the decisions to vote for the person that you want to be. Get a very clear vision of how you see yourself in the world and how you want to show up for yourself and those around you, and act on that every single day.
Yeah, that's great. I'll just piggyback on that and relate it directly to plant medicine. Is every time you are interacting with plant medicine, right, use it as an opportunity to make an intent that whatever comes of the experience will contribute to you reaching all your goals and reaching your full potential. Because it's really our mind and our intent that decides where we go. One of the things I learned especially organic soil, is that if you take care of the soil will take care of the plant. And if you take care of your soul and your mind, it'll take care of everything else.
And I love that because you can't really do one thing without the other. You can't just do plant medicine and not integrate it, or eat like crap and not sleep, and not have those other higher vibrations. And I think that's beautiful. When I did mushrooms the first time, I was telling people who didn't do it, I think the mushrooms are telling me not to eat that. And I thought it was kind of weird, but really, I believed that I was at a higher frequency, and I already told myself I'm like a vulture. I like to smell things, taste things. I don't want preservatives or any of that. But when I took mushrooms, it was on a completely different level of just like this other than conscious level of knowing, should this be in my body or around me? And I think that's beautiful of plant medicine and integrating it in different ways, like nutrition and even friendship or relationship, because you're never just sitting next to someone, you're sitting within them because of their biofield. And so it is important, your tribe. And even though I personally lost along the way, and my son goes to this private school, and other moms think I'm rubbing mushrooms all over my house and smoking weed, there's been a lot of backlash for me, and maybe it's my age and because I have young children. So I love to be at these communities where, I'm outside and I'm not the only one speaking at medical conferences and cancer conferences, and they're always like, Dr. Leva's outside smoking weed, but I always find the 1 to 5% of doctors that want to come out and they're like, let me get some, and I'm like, I'll hold it. I have a card, I'll take the hit, like we're in middle school, I'll take the charge, but they're all hiding behind me, and it's just you find your tribe. So using these medicines, integrating it, allowing it to kind of lead these paths, like being limitless from this point. That's what plant medicine. It's like opening up all these pathways and not really being defined by trauma in your past. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you guys for being here, and maybe if you stay for a second, we'll take a quick picture, and then I hope you guys come to the booth. I think there's a party later going on, so maybe you want to share about that. And I have a WhatsApp group for the Cannadelic community, so if you guys want to party, talk shit,